All right, guys, so we have come up with one design, but let's say you didn't like that design. Well, there's no harm in doing a couple more. So I actually did three separate designs. I did this guy that you saw before, and then I decided to play with just organic shapes, so no straight lines at all curves and circles. And I kind of like the psychedelic look of that one. And then I played with the opposite. I did all triangles or triangle-like shapes. Okay, so I kind of like all three. They present different options. For the triangle one, it presents some cool places that I could maybe cut my styrofoam in some of the areas to kind of provide just a different layer in the project. I like the idea of overlapping and underlapping in this one. And again, like the movement that it provides. And there are some things I really like about the original too, along with the overlaps and underlaps, etc. Okay, so whichever one you choose, it's completely up to you. Let's say I'm going to pick this one to start. You're going to tear it out of your sketchbook, or if you use drawing paper, just take it. And if this part really bothers you, you can go ahead and cut it, but it doesn't quite matter. But you're going to take your styrofoam, okay, and double check that both sides look good. You didn't accidentally draw on one side because you'll see the indentations in there. But we're going to go ahead and take the styrofoam and you're going to wrap the styrofoam using the edges of the paper. And this might be a little tricky to kind of find your edges. I like to hold it up to the sunlight a little bit to find my edges before I go ahead and crease it down. And I'm just taking the paper and folding it kind of like a present. You want to make it pretty taut. You don't want any extra paper flumsying around. And then after I do two sides, I'm going to take a piece of tape. Doesn't matter what kind. I've got masking tape handy, so that's what I'm going to use. But any tape will work. But notice that I'm using small pieces. We don't need to seal this like Fort Knox. We need to be available to access it eventually. So I'm taping it on both sides. And if you're good with that, that's fine. If you would like to fold back the other two sides, you can do that as well. It's kind of just up to you and how much of a perfectionist you want to be, or it's your comfort level too. It just might feel better to have it all kind of closed up for you, like so. All right, and then normally when we are in school, I have you take a Sharpie, and then I have you write your name in Sharpie on the back, so that way you don't accidentally like think it's trash and throw it away. In the classroom, it's so that you can't take somebody else's, etc., etc. So if you want to, go ahead and throw your name on it, write something on it so you don't think it's garbage and throw it out. So now that we have this wrapped piece of styrofoam, okay, and you've got your paper covering it with your design, double check that, this is what it's going to look like. Am I happy with that? And then you need to grab a pencil. Okay, you want to make sure that that pencil is pretty sharp, but it doesn't need to be like crazy sharp because sometimes crazy sharp can do a little bit more harm than we'd like. If you would prefer to go grab a toothpick or something like a toothpick, like a barbecue skewer, you can do that as well, but a pencil will work just fine. And sometimes toothpicks are too short and we can kind of snap them too. I do actually want you to go ahead and grab your sketchbook and use your, and yes, I recycle sketchbooks. This is a Jackson from years ago. I'm actually going to open up to a fresh page, so I'm not on the cover, but I'm on the inside. And what the sketchbook is doing is it's providing a little cushion for you while you work. This is going to make sure that you don't accidentally scratch your table or your desk area that you're working at. So it is really important that you have something underneath you to help protect as you go, because when you are scratching into the styrofoam, you are inevitably going to come off the edge of the paper, and I'd hate for you to press really hard with your pencil and then scratch your desk. Okay, so it's going to sound super simple, but all you're going to do is trace now, and you're going to trace with pressure. Now, not so much pressure that you're going to rip through everything and poke holes in the styrofoam. That's not our goal. Our goal is to create a firm indentation in the styrofoam. So you need to go slow enough that you're making purposeful marks. And I kind of like to go back and forth and sort of trace over my line a few times. But you're going to go ahead and go back and forth and trace over the styrofoam, and you should sort of feel / hear the styrofoam bend as you work. And you have to be careful. Again, like I always go over stuff more than once because I would rather press a little softer and go over it a couple times than press really hard and have like jagged edges. We don't want jagged edges. We want the design to be exactly how you intended it to be. So for mine, I need like nice, sleek curves and smooth circles as I go. So you don't need to watch me do this whole thing. All you need to understand is that you are carving into your styrofoam, but you're not destroying it. We're not pushing through all the way. And so you won't see it on this side. You won't see any indentations on this side. That's a good thing. That means that you're taking care of your styrofoam. Now I'm going to carefully, you're not going to do this, but I just want to show you for the camera. When you're done and you are checking your work, you will carefully unpeel your paper and you will check on your work. And I know it's really hard to see because it's white, but what I'm looking for is I can feel and see the indentations of my work. And I would actually say that I need to go a little bit deeper. So what sometimes I like to do is I finish the whole thing and then I remove the paper and then I go back over everything to make sure that I got it all. Okay, so again, you are tracing with the pencil as your carving tool into the styrofoam. It's okay if you cut through the paper. In fact, that's most likely going to happen. So don't worry about that. What you're trying to avoid is cutting through your styrofoam as you work. I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording, finish this up, and I will fast forward to the end so that you guys can see how I unveil it. Okay, so I'm wrapping it up. I finished tracing everything. I've just got these little circles left to do, and I found these to be the most tricky because they are small. So I wasn't kidding when I said to avoid doing super small detailed things. So I am carefully pressing hard and tracing around a couple times for these circles. It's definitely cutting the paper. I have little like tabs that are flying open, but that's okay. And I will say that the curves were a little bit of a challenge to make sure that like my pencil never slipped or anything. If you chose to do something with more straight edges, feel free to get your ruler back out to help you control those straight lines. Okay, there's no shame in that. It's actually probably the best way to do it to make sure that you're tracing really nicely and you can get that constant pressure. So you'll notice that my design is a lot darker since I've been pressing hard with my pencil. And you will notice that some areas of my paper are definitely torn, and that's okay too. But notice that the back isn't completely mutilated or anything like that. There's no holes in my styrofoam, and I am ready to unpackage. So I'm going to carefully take the tape off, and this is why we didn't need a ton of tape. So get that tape out of there, and then undo your paper carefully. And then you have your design. And you can see where I went all the way through where it's darker. That's where the pencil went through to the styrofoam, and that's okay. But what you're going to look for now is you're going to kind of just do a scan of your projects, and then kind of, I like to look at it with my paper side by side to make sure that my design transferred over everything that I wanted. And I do see a couple areas that I need to press a little bit harder with. And it's okay that the pencil is going to leave some more gray areas. It's totally okay. And you will notice that without the paper on there, you can draw a little smoother. So if you'd like to go over everything again, that is always a good idea. And this time you do not necessarily have to press harder. In fact, sometimes a lighter touch to get that smoother line is what you would like to do. So I'm being very careful to trace around, but definitely refining those indentations around my foam. Okay, so once you have kind of looked it all over and make sure that everything is indented well, then you are done for the day and we are actually ready to start the printing process.